This is Gary Atensi with CNTV, and today we're on location with Natural Design Solutions. Since 2004, they've been combining art and nature while creating a design for humanity. I am here with the project manager, senior project manager, as well as the president. Guys, thanks so much for joining us today. Let's start off a little bit with yourself, Neil. Basically, your company merged here in 2012. You're now the president. But quite honestly, you have over 20 years of experience in landscaping. You bring to the table here. You became a master landscaper back in 1987. Formally, how does an artist like this get involved in this type of work?
Well, I was doing environmental art originally, and then I moved from that into landscape architecture. It was just sort of a natural transition, yeah.
Something that came natural to you, basically being an artist. Now you're working with different materials out here. Right. Let's talk about Colorado. Everywhere we look, we can see some beautiful landscaping here. Let me ask you, is Colorado within itself a nice landscape to work in?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's kind of our whole goal, is to play up on what Colorado has to offer in our landscapes. We use primarily native and regionally adapted plants. It's sustainable. They do really well, seasonal interest, year-long interest. So Colorado, there's so many different habitats, and we just, we work all over the state and up into Wyoming and even into New Mexico. So we have a very versatile ability to plant, and we really play off of the environment here. But you can't mimic nature, but we call it biomimicry. So try and do that.
Wonderful. I mean, quite honestly, regardless of the building, be it a church, be it a military, be it a Bass Pro Shop like this here, they're complemented by landscape. Quite honestly, it's the first thing that we see upon approach. Do you think that sometimes the landscape can really set the tone for an entire neighborhood?
Well, definitely, and it's the first thing people see, so it's what you call curb appeal, and it can enhance the value of the property tremendously to have a well-designed landscape to complement the architecture.
As an artist yourself, as a sculptor, you've been used to using materials as an artist. This is kind of different because of the fact you probably come across different materials based on the project, and we're talking about different types of plants and whatnot. Does that make it challenging, yet at the same time keep it interesting?
Yeah, it's somewhat challenging, but with plants being our medium, basically, there's a lot of science involved with knowing, how to pick the correct plant for the right spot, and but there's a whole lot of composition that goes into it as well in terms of, making the plants work together, color and form-wise, and so forth.
I mean, some of the material you guys are working with is living material. We're talking about plants. We're talking about animal communities. I mean, obviously, a certain amount of respect has to go into the design when you're talking about existing ecosystems.
Yeah, you're right, and we have to consider that these evolve over time. They change, and typically you look at architecture, and there's so much thought that goes into the building and how it's built, and once it's built, yes, it's a system, it functions, but ours really evolve and mature over time. It takes years to actually realize the full potential of the landscape, and like Neil said, once that's done, it can really make or break a project. And so we just focus on using the right plants that'll last a long time, that'll look good all the time, or at least, most of the time.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, like you said, years in the making here. Proper landscape is more than aesthetics. We're talking about sustainability. He had mentioned that earlier. Is that really the goal here, making sure it is here today, but yet down the road as well?
That's right. We do focus on doing sustainable design and water conservation as well, which is a big issue in Colorado as well as most places. So we're trying to put in a product that's going to last for years and years instead of something that's going to die down the road. And we have to figure this is not a time to think about it, but often we get droughts, and we want plants that can survive, and to be sustainable it has to survive. So
one of the things I see out there is that basically environmental design, obviously if it's done correctly, does the landscape almost maintain itself, almost, if it's done right?
Well, that's a tough one because, what I say when people tell me there's no such thing as a maintenance-free landscape, I say, well, look at a natural area. We don't maintain those. And the reason is because nature does all the work. And so what we try to focus on is sort of emulating natural processes. And the more we bring in the natural process, we're taking the burden of the maintenance off of the landowner and letting nature do a lot more of the work. So that's sort of how we work with nature instead of against it.
That totally makes sense. You're able to take native plants, local materials, combine those together, and really stay true to the existing area or the project you're working on.
Right. Yeah. It's locally sensitive. We look at, we do a soil sample for every site. We consider what the soil is. We look at local plants. We have a really good knowledge of what grows where, whether it's a mountain community or it's a prairie landscape we're kind of emulating. So again, a lot of versatility, a lot of thought goes into this, much more than most people would think. I mean, it's a lot of planning. A lot of science, and it's kind of a combination of art and science.
I believe that. I mean, your team has been trusted with some really major projects out there. Obviously, it's an investment for the folks. They're investing in the property. It brings the value up. But not only that, if done properly, we're investing in our planet. We're investing in the future.
That's true. And we have to protect nature. We kind of, have the idea of protecting the public health, safety, and welfare as well. And part of that welfare is, passing on an environment that's livable to our children. And we're very conscientious about, working with nature, preserving nature where we can, reducing the impact on the natural environment.
You guys are consulting between nature, the client, and all the expertise you guys bring to the table. Speaking of the client, does this really begin with them? Their needs, what they need, and is a consultation on the front end critical?
Yeah, and again, it's, we have clients we've worked with for years, and we have new clients, and it's just getting to know what they're looking for. Again, first and foremost, we satisfy the local requirements for, the planning, but we always try and make it look good, and we have to balance a lot of things. We have to balance the client expectations, the budgets, and also, just the aesthetics. So it's a lot to juggle, and I feel like we do it well, and it's a lot of fun.
For folks that don't have experience in it, sounds rather overwhelming. I mean, you've got a lot of moving pieces, it looks like. Viewers, take a look at the bottom of the screen right there. What you're going to see is their website. On the website, first of all, take a look at the portfolio. You can take a look at some of the projects they've worked on before. We're talking about commercial projects, multifamily dwelling, military, schools, parks, you name it. They've been trusted with quite a few projects out there, not only here in Colorado, but up into Wyoming as well. And take a look there. They've got a blog that can kind of help you a little bit when you're planning something yourself and possibly see the direction they're taking things as well. Obviously, here in Colorado, as a native myself, we're very, we see our resource being water. And this is something that we can see landscape can help with. Not only does it save money, but can it save that resource as well?
That's correct. We save, water resources. We focus on, by reducing the amount of water needed in the landscape from irrigation standpoint, we're able to use drip irrigation systems and stuff. We minimize the turf areas so that we're not needing as much water in the landscape often, if that's what they want, basically.
Last questions for folks out there. Is there a certain time of year when it's best to make a phone call into you? Obviously, there's a lot of planning stage before you even get out there, but is there a time of year when people, when there's a peak season for you?
Since we do a lot of commercial and residential as well, we're here whenever someone needs us. We're just a phone call away. We can do landscape, irrigation, we do planning work, we do graphics, we do pretty much everything that this field has to offer and needs. So I'd say if there's anything they need, to call us anytime. We're here all year. So
this is Colorado. We work year round, right? Doesn't matter. Let me ask you one last question here. When is it you actually appreciate your work? I mean, is it after the completed job? Is it take months later for you to look at photographs and realize, wow, that's pretty amazing?
Yeah, it actually takes several years for things to mature. And a lot of times, we get comments, well, it looks kind of sparse, and that's because it just got installed and the plants have to grow. Now, we could put big plants in, but it's going to cost a whole lot more if we do that. So we have to think into the future of how big these plants are going to get. And so we put them in based on their future size, not, at the time of installation. So they do tend to look better over time.
Not only artists, but visionaries, being able to see what that's going to grow into. Last time viewers, take a look at the bottom of the screen. You can see their contact information right there. This is a company that really services all of Colorado, also up into Wyoming as well. We're talking about major projects, multifamily dwellings, schools, parks, military, commercial, across the board, but also residential. If you're not sure if there's a project they can handle, give them a call. You'll either be speaking with the president here or the senior project manager. That, again, is Natural Design Solutions since 2004, combining art and nature, creating a design for humanity. This is Gary Atensi with CNTV, and if you don't know, now you know.